Have you ever felt like fighting someone who always seems to have control of the situation, someone who manipulates you, devalues you, or makes you feel small even when you know you're doing your best? If so, know that you are not alone. Narcissistic. Relationships can be exhausted, confusing, and often seem impossible to solve. But the good news is that there is a way to face this situation, and it comes from an unexpected place, the ancient wisdom of Stoicism. Today, we will explore how to use Marco Aurelius's teachings, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers in history, to deal with narcissistic people. We are not talking about direct confrontations or attempts to change their behavior. That would be like trying to tame a storm. Instead, let's focus on something much more powerful: protecting your mind, setting healthy boundaries, and avoiding falling into the typical emotional traps of these dynamics. At the end of this video, you will have 4 practical steps based on Stoicism to turn this difficult relationship into a personal growth opportunity. If you have already felt emotionally exhausted, questioned your self-esteem, or simply did not know how to react to a cruel or manipulative comment, this video is for you. Together, let's find out how emotionally free from the clutches of a narcissist and recover his mental peace. So take a deep breath, take something to write down, and get ready to learn tools that will change the way you deal with these situations forever. To face a problem, we first need to understand it. So before we dive into the 4 practical steps you can apply in your daily life, let's talk about what exactly is narcissism and why it affects the surrounding people so much. Narcissism is not just about someone being egocentric or vain. In fact, we're talking about a pattern of behavior that involves an extreme need for validation, lack of empathy for others, and a constant tendency to manipulate people to meet their own needs. Imagine that person who always seems to be at the center of attention, whether at a work meeting, dinner with friends, or even at home with family. It monopolizes conversations, devalues the efforts of others, and rarely demonstrates genuine interest in the emotions or opinions of others. Now think about how this makes you feel: invisible, devalued, perhaps even questioning your own self-esteem. This is the emotional impact of narcissism, and it can be devastating. In the professional environment, for example, you can have a narcissistic boss who only sees your mistakes, never your hits. He can criticize his work publicly, but when you do something right, the credit goes to it. In personal relationships, it can be that partner who blames you for everything, even when the problem has nothing to do with you, or that friend who always transforms conversations into monologues about your achievements, completely ignoring what you have to say. These repeated behaviors can lead to symptoms such as emotional exhaustion, low self-esteem, and even burnout. You start to ask yourself, am I really as incompetent as this person says? Or, why no one else realizes what's going on? This sense of impotence is understandable, but it is also important to recognize that it does not need to define your life. Here is the truth: you cannot change the behavior of a narcissist, but it can change as it reacts to it. And that is exactly what we will explore in the next chapters. Based on Marco Aurelius's teachings, we will learn to protect our minds, establish clear limits, and turn this difficult relationship into an opportunity to strengthen our emotional resilience. But before that, let's understand how Stoicism can be applied in a practical way to deal with these challenging situations. Step 1. Accept what cannot be controlled. Now that we better understand what narcissism is and how it affects our lives, let's start with the first practical step based on Stoicism: accept what cannot be controlled. This principle, central to Marco Aurelius's philosophy, may seem simple at first glance, but its application is powerful, especially when we deal with difficult people. Marco Aurelio wrote in his Meditations, "We cannot control what happens, but we can control as we react." This idea is fundamental in dealing with a narcissist. Trying to change their behavior or expect them to be different is like trying to tame a storm, impossible and exhaustive. Instead, the focus should be on something you can control, your own reaction. Let's think of a practical example. Imagine that you are at a work meeting and your narcissistic boss begins to publicly criticize your performance, even if you have done a great job. The natural tendency would be emotionally shaken, perhaps even questioning its competence. But here is the key. You can't control what your boss says or does. What you can control is how you respond internally. Instead of getting carried away by emotion, take a deep breath and recognize that this criticism does not define who you are. You can choose not to internalize his words. Remember, his behavior reflects more about him than about you. This change of perspective is liberating. She takes away the power that the narcissist has about his emotions and puts that power back in his hands. To apply this principle in everyday life, try taking a break before reacting. When someone devalues or manipulates you, ask yourself, is this something I can control? If the answer is no, focus on keeping your calm and balance. A useful technique is to visualize the situation as if it were an external observer. This helps to create emotional distance and see the behavior of the narcissist for what it really is, a projection of his own insecurities. To reinforce this concept, remember this phrase by Marco Aurelio. A man's life is what his thoughts make of her. Your reactions and thoughts are what define your experience, not the actions of others. By accepting what cannot be controlled, you already take the first step towards emotional freedom. And this leads us to the next principle, to practice virtue and integrity even in the face of adversity. Step 2. Practice virtue and integrity. Now that we have learned to accept what we cannot control, it is time to advance to the second step, to practice virtue and integrity. This Stoic principle teaches us that, even in the face of adversities, we must act with honesty, patience, and compassion, not because of the other, but for ourselves. When we deal with a narcissist, it may be tempting to react with anger, frustration, or even manipulation. However, by choosing to act with virtue, we are strengthening our own self-esteem and resilience. Stoics believe that our strength comes from within, and that acting with integrity makes us immune to external provocations. This means that regardless of how the narcissist behaves, you can choose to respond aligned with their values. For example, imagine that a narcissistic friend makes you an unfair criticism during a conversation. Instead of returning with another criticism or being defeated, you can answer calmly and firmly. I understand that you have this opinion, but I trust my work and my intentions. This answer not only protects your mind, but also demonstrates emotional maturity. Practicing virtue does not mean being passive or letting others turn together on you. On the contrary, it is a powerful way to say who you are. When you act with integrity, you are sending a clear message, both to yourself and the world, that your value does not depend on the validation of others. This is especially important when dealing with narcissists who often try to undermine their confidence to feel superior. Let's think of another practical example. Imagine that you are in a relationship with someone who constantly devalues you. Instead of internalizing these criticisms or getting into unnecessary conflicts, you can answer with something like, I understand that you are frustrated, but I will not accept this kind of comment. I effort every day to be the best version of myself. This approach not only protects your self-esteem, but also establishes a clear pattern of how you deserve to be treated. To apply this principle in everyday life, try to reflect on your actions before reacting. Ask yourself, is this answer aligned with who I am and the values I defend? In doing so, you will be strengthening your integrity and creating a solid foundation to face any difficult situation. And this leads us to the next step, to set clear boundaries without guilt or fear. Step 3. Establish clear limits. Now that you've learned to accept what you can't control and practice virtue in your interactions, it's time to take a crucial step: setting clear boundaries. This third Stoic principle teaches us that protecting our mind and energy is essential to maintain our inner peace. When we deal with narcissists, we often feel guilty or fear in saying no or imposing limits. However, Stoic people believed that preserving our mental energy is an act of self-pity, and this includes establishing firm barriers against toxic behaviors. Establishing limits does not mean being rude or confronting. On the contrary, it is a way of communicating your needs in an assertive and respectful way. For example, imagine that you have a narcissistic friend who always monopolizes conversations, talking only about your achievements and ignoring your experiences. Instead of feeling frustrated or invisible, you can say something like, "I like to listen to your stories, but I would also like to share my own experiences. Can we share the time of conversation?" This approach not only sets a clear limit, but also encourages a more balanced dynamic in the relationship. Limits are especially important in the professional environment. Imagine that your narcissistic boss constantly asks you to work beyond the time without recognizing your efforts. Instead of accepting everything passively, you can answer with something like, "I understand that there are times when we need extra dedication, but I also need to balance my time to ensure my long-term productivity." This answer not only protects your energy, but also reinforces your position in a professional way. To apply this principle in everyday life, try identifying the behaviors that most worsen you emotionally. Then, think about how you can communicate your limits clearly and firmly. Remember, saying no is not selfishness, it is a way of respecting yourself. A useful tool is to create key phrases that can be used in different situations. For example, "I understand your point of view, but this situation makes me feel uncomfortable. I need time to reflect before answering." This kind of comment does not contribute to a productive conversation. By setting clear limits, you are sending a powerful message. You value your energy and not allow it to be drained by toxic behaviors. And this leads us to the last step: focus on its inner growth, transforming adversity into opportunities for personal evolution. Step 4. Focus on your inner growth. We arrived at the fourth and last step: focus on its inner growth. This Stoic principle teaches us that adversities are not only obstacles, but also opportunities for learning and personal transformation. Marco Aurelius stated, "Adversity is a teacher." When we deal with narcissists, we can choose to see these difficult situations as a chance to strengthen our resilience, self-confidence, and emotional wisdom. Focusing on inner growth means changing your perspective on challenges. Instead of wondering, "Why is this happening to me?" try to reflect, "What can I learn from it?" This change of mindset can turn a painful experience into a journey of self-discovery. For example, by facing unfair criticism of a narcissistic boss, you can use this situation to develop patience, empathy, and assertive communication skills. Each difficult interaction becomes an opportunity to practice virtues such as calm, integrity, and compassion. A powerful practice to cultivate this growth is daily reflection. Book a few minutes at the end of the day to think about your experiences and identify what you have learned. Ask yourself, how did I react? What worked well? What could I improve? Also, maintaining a gratitude diary can be a valuable tool. Write down at least 3 things you are grateful every day, even if they are small achievements or moments of peace. This helps reinforce a positive mindset and recognize its own value, regardless of external circumstances. Another useful technique is meditation or mindfulness. Practicing full attention allows you to observe your thoughts and emotions without completely identifying with them. This is especially useful when dealing with narcissists, as it helps to create emotional distance and avoid impulsive reactions. There are applications and digital features that can guide you in this practice, making it accessible and easy to incorporate into your routine. By focusing on your inner growth, you not only protect yourself emotionally, but also strengthen yourself as a person. Remember, true power comes from within. No matter how narcissistic try to devalue you, your internal strength and wisdom remain unassailable. And it is exactly this transformation that leads us to the conclusion of this video, recapitulating the 4 steps and reinforcing how they can change your life forever. We have reached the end of this video, but I hope you leave here with practical tools and a new perspective on how to deal with narcissists. Quickly recap the 4 steps based on Marco Aurelius's Stoicism. Accept what cannot be controlled. Focus on their reactions, not in the behaviors of others. Practice virtue and integrity. Answer calmly, firmly, and alignment to your values. E3. Establish clear limits. Protect your energy and communicate your needs in an assertive way. Focus on your inner growth. Turn adversities into opportunities to strengthen your resilience and emotional wisdom. These principles not only help deal with narcissists, but can also be applied to any challenge in life. Remember, you can't change the behavior of a narcissist, but you can change as it reacts to it, and that makes all the difference. By protecting your mind, setting limits, and focusing on your growth, you will be ready to face any difficult relationship with wisdom and resilience. If this video helped you, I invite you to leave your like and share with someone who needs this message. Narcissistic relationships can be lonely, but together we can create a community of support and learning. Subscribe to the channel for more content about personal development, practical philosophy, and strategies to deal with the challenges of everyday life. Finally, remember this powerful phrase of Marco Aurelio: a man's life is what his thoughts make her. Your choices, reactions, and attitudes are what define your experience. Do not allow anyone to steal your mental peace or diminish your value. You have the power to transform any difficult situation into a growth opportunity. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.